I'm Ava Sterling, 32, female. I'm a corporate litigation attorney in a major metropolitan firm. And for the last 5 years, I'd been sharing the house I helped pay off with my parents, Brenda and Robert, in a supposed family arrangement. We bought the house together, a 3-bedroom ranch, pooling my hefty down payment with their savings, but my name was never officially added to the title. I quickly learned the difference between having a home and having a place to stay when my mother's bitterness finally turned the house key in the lock, shutting me out for good. My parents changed the locks and essentially disowned me over a ridiculous disagreement about my work hours. They felt my demanding legal career meant I was too busy to be a proper daughter, and started accusing me of using them. One Tuesday evening, after winning a difficult summary judgment motion, I drove home exhausted, only to find my key didn't work, and my mother, Brenda, standing on the porch, a chilling smile on her face. Her words were simple, calculated, and devastating. "You have no home here anymore, Ava. Your money bought you nothing but a guest room we are taking back. Get your things and don't come back." I was a 32-year-old, successful attorney, sleeping on a friend's couch within the hour. But they messed with the wrong lawyer. They thought they could take my money, change the rules, and leave me destitute. They were about to find out that when you go against a litigation attorney, you don't just lose the argument. You lose a lot more. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. I stared at the pristine brass lock set. It was brand new, gleaming under the porch light, a cruel replacement for the chipped silver one my key had opened for 5 years. My hand, still clutching my briefcase and a stack of legal documents, trembled. My mother, Brenda Sterling, was leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, the picture of smug self-satisfaction. "Don't waste your time, Ava," she said, her voice dripping with the cold authority she rarely used. But when she did, it hit like ice. "I had the locks changed this afternoon. You aren't welcome here anymore." I felt the familiar flush of blood rushing to my head, the kind of heat that usually preceded a courtroom argument. But this wasn't a courtroom. This was my mother, the woman who raised me, kicking me out of the home I had financially stabilized. "What in the hell are you talking about?" I demanded, trying to keep the lawyer out of my tone, but failing miserably. "We had an agreement. I paid the $80,000 down payment on this house, and I pay first $500 every month for the mortgage and utilities. I'm a co-owner in everything but paperwork, and you know it." Brenda's smile didn't falter. It widened slightly. "Ah yes, the paperwork, that pesky detail. See, Robert and we are the only ones on the deed. Your money was a gift. A generous one, yes, but a gift to your parents. We decided we don't need your gifts anymore. Especially not with the attitude that comes with them." My father, Robert Sterling, a normally quiet man who spent his retirement tending the yard, appeared in the living room window, his face a passive mask. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was the silent partner in my mother's cruelty, a choice that cut deeper than my mother's verbal assault. The realization hit me then: this wasn't a sudden burst of anger. It was a premeditated move. Discussed, planned, and executed. "A gift," I scoffed, pulling my phone out. "I have 5 years of bank transfers marked housing payment, mortgage equity. I have emails detailing the division of costs, and the understanding that once I got my partnership bonus, we'd add my name to the deed. We even had a notary ready to go last year." "Plans change," Brenda chirped, adjusting her robe. "That bonus never came, did it? So the deed never changed." "The truth is, Ava, you're a difficult daughter. You're always working, always stressed, bringing your job home with you. This is our quiet retirement home. Go find a place that suits your aggressive lifestyle." She threw a small, black garbage bag at my feet. It was half full. "That's everything we could find of yours. Your essential toiletries and a few outfits. The rest is packed up in the garage. You have 3 days to arrange for a moving company to take it. Or we'll donate it." I was numb, but the numbness was quickly dissolving into a razor-sharp focus. Brenda didn't just kick out her daughter, she committed a financial an ethical violation against an attorney who specialized in winning. She gave me the fight of my life, but she also gave me the motivation to weaponize my expertise. I picked up the pathetic bag. You just made a mistake, Mom. A catastrophic, legal mistake. You're not dealing with your little girl anymore. You're dealing with Iva Sterling, corporate litigation. You used my money to purchase and maintain this asset under false pretenses. That money was not a gift. It was an investment under contract. And now, I'm going to enforce that contract, whether it exists on paper or just in the 5 years of evidence I've meticulously saved. I turned, walked to my car, and drove directly to the apartment of my colleague, Jason Miller, a brilliant real estate attorney. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just planned. Brenda and Robert thought they owned 100% of that house. By the time I was done, they'd be lucky to own 65%. The next morning, sitting across from Jason Miller in his home office, I laid out the entirety of my documentation. I didn't need to tell him how devastating it was. He could see the cold, professional determination in my eyes, a determination usually reserved for the multi-million-dollar corporate mergers we handled. This time, the stakes were personal equity and the emotional value of the only home I'd known as an adult. Jason's specialty was, thankfully, real estate and probate, the exact areas where my parents' defense would be weakest. He spread the documents across his table. The original closing disclosure, showing the 80,000 down payment, I wired directly to the escrow agent, 5 years of detailed bank statements, totaling 90,000 in monthly payments explicitly labeled, mortgage a home equity contribution, and the email chain where we discussed the future deed transfer and my expected percentage of ownership. They'll argue the doctrine of unjust enrichment. Jason stated, tapping a pen on the deed that listed only Brenda and Robert Sterling. They'll claim you were simply paying fair market rent during your residency, and the down payment was, as your mother stated, a gift to them as a show of good faith. They will claim you received the benefit of housing, so no debt is owed. I shook my head sharply. The monthly payments were $1,500. Fair market rent for that area for a 3-bedroom house is about $2,500, but that's moot. I have the email where Dad admitted the $1,500 covered half the total mortgage and property taxes. If I were a renter, they wouldn't have let me renovate the master bathroom and build the patio, which I paid for entirely. Another $35,000 in material and labor costs I have invoices for. Renters don't sink capital into an asset they don't believe they have an ownership stake in. Jason nodded, his eyes bright with professional interest. Exactly. Your evidence defeats the fair market rent argument and strongly supports the existence of an implied trust, or a constructive trust. We can argue that although the legal title is with them, the beneficial or equitable title is shared, because they accepted your substantial financial contribution, with the mutual understanding that you would eventually be added to the deed. The renovation costs are crucial here. They demonstrate an owner's intent, not a tenant's. We can use the legal concept of part performance to enforce the oral agreement. The sheer professionalism of the conversation was my shield against the betrayal. We were talking about my parents like they were hostile corporate entities. And honestly, that's exactly how I viewed them now. They had breached the most fundamental contract of all family. Jason then calculated my total contribution, including the principal payoff, market appreciation attributed to my capital improvements, and the initial down payment, which came to approximately 35% of the house's current appraised value. Our goal isn't just to get your money back, Iva, he said, sliding a preliminary demand letter across the desk. It's to secure your rightful percentage of equity. They want to sell. They buy you out. They want to stay. They accept you as a partial owner on the deed and pay you a portion of the fair rental value for your equity stake. We hit them with a claim for partition and seek a declaratory judgment, establishing your 35% beneficial interest. The demand letter was drafted immediately, outlining the claim for 35% ownership of the house at 4220 Crestwood Drive, or a buyout at the current market value of that percentage. It was certified, registered, and scheduled to be delivered to my parents the next morning. I had done my part. Now it was time to let the law do its job. The defense they thought they had, a mere lack of my name on the deed, was flimsy, easily pierced by 5 years of my diligent financial records. They relied on me being their emotional daughter. They forgot I was a meticulous lawyer. The game was officially on. The day the certified letter was delivered, my phone exploded. It wasn't the measured reply of their own counsel. It was a furious, rambling call from my mother, Brenda. I let it go straight to voicemail. I had implemented a complete communication blackout. From the moment I left that porch, my parents became litigation targets. And as any good attorney knows, you don't speak to the opposing party without counsel present, especially when they are prone to making self-incriminating statements. Later, I listened to the message with Jason present, every word being mentally cataloged as potential evidence. Brenda was screaming, calling me a spiteful, ungrateful snake, and threatening to donate every single one of my belongings, even the expensive antique desk I inherited from my grandmother.
This is harassment, Ava! You can't sue your own mother! You're a disgrace to this family!
That money was a loan, a personal loan for housing. And now we'll just pay it back? Stop this nonsense right now, she shrieked. Jason simply smiled, paused the recording, and pointed to his notes. She just admitted it wasn't a gift, but a loan, that she intends to pay back. We've successfully shifted the burden of proof from a gift to a debt, or, even better for us, an investment. The narrative of rent is collapsing. She just handed us a huge point in establishing an owner-occupant financial relationship. Our strategy was surgically precise, designed to exploit the very things that made my mother think she was invincible: their sole position on the deed, and their ability to leverage emotional manipulation. I didn't want the house outright. I wanted my equity and the profit my capital contribution had generated. A lawsuit for partition was the nuclear option, forcing a sale of the property if they couldn't or wouldn't buy out my 35% stake. We didn't immediately file the partition action. Instead, we filed a complaint for a declaratory judgment and constructive trust, asking the court to legally acknowledge that I had a beneficial ownership interest in the property proportional to my total investment. This moved faster, put immediate pressure on the property, essentially clouding the title, and forced them to retain counsel to defend the asset. Within 2 weeks, we received a curt reply from a local firm specializing in family law and real estate. They predictably denied the existence of any agreement beyond a familial tenant-landlord arrangement, offering to refund the $80,000 down payment only, claiming the $90,000 in monthly payments was rent for my occupancy. It was exactly the position we anticipated. They are trying to treat the initial investment as the principal debt, and the monthly payments as simple rent. I analyzed, feeling the thrill of the legal chess game, detached from the emotional pain. We object to that immediately. I was not a simple tenant. I was a contributing co-owner who paid for major capital improvements that increased their asset value. We demand full discovery and an accounting of all capital appreciation and improvements over the 5-year period. My work as a corporate litigator was now applied directly to my personal life, and I was relentless. I leveraged my firm's resources and network, using the skills I honed fighting Fortune 500 companies against my own parents. They wanted to play hardball. I was the one who wrote the rulebook for this game. They had believed the law was only interested in the document itself, the deed. But I was about to teach them that the law was also deeply interested in equity, intent, and fair dealing. The court-mandated mediation session was held in a neutral downtown office suite 3 months later. I sat with Jason on one side of a large mahogany table, while Brenda and Robert sat with their attorney, Mr. Thompson, on the other. My parents looked older, strained. The stress of being on the receiving end of aggressive litigation was clearly wearing them down. A minor, chilling satisfaction I immediately suppressed. The initial offers were predictably far apart. Mr. Thompson reiterated their stance they would pay back the $80,000 in down payment, plus a token amount of interest, and call the rest rent. Jason, however, had the leverage. He presented the complete accounting: my $205,000 total contribution, down payment, monthly contributions, and improvements, the current appraisal of the house, and our calculated 35% equity claim. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling? Jason addressed them calmly. Ava's investment has significantly increased the value of your asset. We are seeking a court order establishing a constructive trust, which will cloud the title and ultimately force a sale by partition if you fail to reach an equitable settlement here. Our current demand is a buyout of 175,000, representing the principal paid, the renovation costs, and the appropriate appreciation based on her percentage of ownership. Brenda, unable to contain herself, burst out before her lawyer could intervene. 175,000.
You're delusional.
We'll never pay that much to a snake who sues her own family. The mediator, a seasoned retired judge, immediately separated the parties. In our private room, Jason turned to me. She just sealed the deal that this won't settle in mediation. Her emotional outbursts, which the mediator witnessed, show a clear lack of good faith and an unwillingness to act reasonably. The mediator will write that in their report to the judge. We're going to trial, Ava. That's where we wanted to be anyway. The mediator's final proposal was a compromise, a $140,000 buyout, which my parents immediately rejected. They offered $95,000. It was clear they viewed this entire legal battle as a prolonged family argument they intended to win purely through emotional attrition. After the mediation failed, I received a barrage of texts and missed calls directly from my mother, violating the explicit instruction from their own counsel. Ava, this is your last chance. Drop the suit. We are family. Robert is stressed and sick over this. Don't you care about your father? She used every trick in the book: guilt, fear, and sentimental manipulation. I forwarded every message to Jason, who added them to our exhibit list as evidence of the hostile environment and their desperate attempts to circumvent the legal process. The final mockery came when I needed to retrieve the rest of my belongings from the garage. I hired a professional mover and had Jason draft a formal notice of entry. When the movers arrived, Brenda stood by, supervising, her expression one of utter disdain. As they loaded my furniture, she stood near the antique desk, running her hand over the wood. This desk belonged to your grandmother. She would be ashamed of what you've become, she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't flinch. Grandmother knew the value of an honest contract, Mom. You don't. See you in court. I didn't let her see the pain. She wanted to win by making me feel guilty. I intended to win by making them financially accountable. The case was formally set for trial. The trial wasn't a long, drawn-out affair. It was an equity hearing focused solely on the financial relationship and intent. The stakes were high, and the air in the courtroom was thick with unspoken tension. A family drama played out under the cold scrutiny of the bench. I was not counsel, but I sat at the table with Jason, feeding him notes and exhibiting the cool, professional demeanor of a lawyer, not a daughter. This detachment was necessary for survival. Jason began our opening argument by setting the scene. Not a tenant-landlord relationship, but a joint investment in a familial setting, emphasizing the mutual intent to build a secure future. Your Honor. Jason's voice was steady and compelling. The deed may be the foundation, but the true legal structure is built on equity. We will prove that the defendants, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, accepted over $205,000 from Ms. Sterling in down payments, monthly contributions, and capital improvements, all under the clear, documented premise that she was building equity and would ultimately be added to the deed. This is not a case about rent. It is a case about a constructive trust, an equitable remedy to prevent the unjust enrichment of the defendants who now seek to strip Mrs. Sterling of her rightful share of the asset she paid for. Their lawyer, Mr. Thompson, countered with the simple, brutal reality. The plaintiff's name is not on the deed. The statute of frauds requires a real estate agreement to be in writing. There is no written agreement. My clients provided a home to their daughter for 5 years. They offered to return her initial gift, but the rest was simply payment for her lodging. She had a place to stay, she just lost her privilege. The evidence phase was where we crushed their narrative. Jason presented the bank records, the transfer labels of equity, and most importantly, the email chain. He put my father, Robert Sterling, on the stand first, and Robert crumbled under cross-examination. Jason simply asked, "Mr. Sterling, in your email dated June 12, 2021, you wrote to Ava, we just need to make sure the deed reflects your 35% before we finalize the refinance. What did you mean by your 35%? Robert looked at the floor, muttering, "It was just a number. It was what we were talking about. But the damage was done. It wasn't rent, it was her 35%. Then came the capital improvements. I took the stand to present the invoices for the $35,000 master bathroom renovation and the patio extension." "Ms. Sterling," Jason asked, "why would you, as a supposed tenant, spend $30,000 on permanent fixtures for a property you did not believe you owned?" I looked directly at the judge. "Because I was not a tenant, Your Honor. I was an owner, investing my capital into an asset I fully believed was partly mine. I had 5 years of evidence and my parents' own words to support that belief." The emotional low point was my mother, Brenda, on the stand. She was hostile and accusatory, railing against my perceived ingratitude. But when Jason introduced the recording of her voicemail, where she called the $80 in a loan she'd pay back, the judge's expression hardened. Her emotional defense couldn't override her financial admissions. The final legal argument rested on unjust enrichment and constructive trust. They had accepted my capital contributions under a shared understanding, and it would be fundamentally unfair, unjust, for them to keep the entirety of the house and the resulting appreciation. We concluded the evidence presentation, confident that we had proven intent and equitable ownership beyond a reasonable doubt. The judge issued his ruling 2 weeks after the hearing, a concise, 10-page judgment that I read with a cold, professional satisfaction. It wasn't a family reconciliation. It was a legal victory based purely on the merits of my evidence and their lack of a credible counter-argument. The judge sided unequivocally with my claim of equitable ownership. The judgment stated, while the formal requirements of the statute of frauds were not met, the doctrine of constructive trust is here established to prevent the unjust enrichment of the defendants. The plaintiff's consistent and significant financial contributions, particularly the large down payment and the capital improvements, combined with the defendant's own documented statements of the plaintiff's 35% share, demonstrate a clear and enforceable beneficial ownership interest. The judge declared that Ava Sterling held a 35% beneficial interest in the property at 4220 Crestwood Drive. He ordered that the property be appraised immediately to determine its current market value. The order then gave my parents, Brenda and Robert Sterling, 2 options. Option A, buyout. They had 90 days to secure financing and buy out my 35% share at the appraised market value. Option B, partition sale. If they failed to buy me out, the house would be listed for public sale, and 35% of the net proceeds, after closing costs and the remaining mortgage were settled, would be immediately transferred to me. There was no ambiguity. The law cut through the emotional manipulation and returned a cold, hard percentage. The final appraised value of the house came back at $550,000. My 35% share was valued at $192,500. This was significantly more than the $80,000 they had offered to return, reflecting the 5 years of mortgage contributions, my improvements, and the market appreciation I was now legally entitled to. Jason immediately filed a liens on the property to secure my interest. When Brenda and Robert received the judgment and the appraisal, they didn't call to beg or yell. They called their lawyer, Mr. Thompson. The news they received was stark. They could not afford the $192,500 buyout. They were retired, and their savings, already depleted by years of relying on my payments, could not cover the debt without refinancing their entire retirement structure, a move they were unwilling to make. Within 30 days of the ruling, the house was quietly listed by a court-appointed realtor. The ultimate irony was that the house my parents wanted for a peaceful retirement was now being sold, because they were too greedy to honor a 35% share, and tried to take 100%. They had tried to expel me from the family and the house. Instead, the house was expelling them. The house sold 6 weeks after it was listed, closing in just over 90 days, right on the deadline set by the judge. The sale was a quiet, clinical transaction entirely handled by the attorneys and the escrow company. My parents, Brenda and Robert, moved out before the closing date. Their final emotional outburst limited to a single, venomous email from Brenda to Jason, threatening to appeal the judgment to a higher court. A threat Jason quickly dismissed as legally baseless. The threat was empty, the judgment was iron-clad. On the day the funds were released, I received a wire transfer for 187,450 pesos, the exact 35% of the net equity after all closing costs and the remaining mortgage principal were paid. The amount was almost double the initial cash I had sunk into the property, and represented the full value of the equity, an appreciation my contributions had earned. I used a portion of the money to put a substantial down payment on a beautiful condominium closer to my law firm, securing a home that was unequivocally and solely mine. I titled it in my name and mine alone. I had paid for a partnership that was brutally dissolved, but the dissolution resulted in the capital for my new, independent life. The legal victory was complete, but the family loss was permanent. I never spoke to my parents again. They sent a single, unsigned Christmas card the following year, which I promptly shredded. The emotional price of the lawsuit was the end of the relationship, but the financial reward was my complete independence, and the validation that I was right. I hadn't just sued my parents, I had successfully sued a greedy, fraudulent business arrangement, disguised as a family relationship. I taught them that equity trumps title, when a clear intent and substantial capital contribution can be proven. They lost their peaceful retirement, forced into a smaller, less desirable rental apartment, their finances severely impacted by the sale and their own legal fees. I, however, had turned a devastating betrayal into a significant, life-changing financial gain, securing my future. My mother thought she took my home. I took a percentage of hers.